It just takes a few seconds for me to be able to see the video that is going on LinkedIn. So we'll wait a few seconds just so I can see that, and hopefully I can get the URL of the video itself. I can get the chat. Hopefully there'll be a few people that ends up watching us live. So I've got the video link here. So what I'm going to do just before I start the main discussion, what we're going to be talking about here is I'm going to take the URL and post it in a couple of places, because the obviously LinkedIn Live is in a bit of a beta at the moment, which means that you don't actually get the URL beforehand before you start broadcasting live. You have to go live, grab the URL, and then tell different people in different places about that. So what I'm going to do is copy and paste that URL in a couple of places. Just done that there. I click a test button there as well. There's nothing like juggling a few plates. We've got a wonderful discussion today with a great guest that's joining me today, but I'm going to introduce him just in a second. I'm going to put 10, 11, a few people starting to watch live. Hi there, if you're watching live, thank you so much for joining and watching us live. If you can see me and hear me, just let me know in the chat that you can hear me okay, and that would be fabulous. And we're going to be talking content marketing today, of course, with Mr. Marcus Sheridan, but I'm going to give him an introduction just in a second. In the meantime, I'm going to click a quick button just to send a message to some other people that we are broadcasting live, and that is done there, and hopefully that will be done. So as we're live, I can now actually see in the chat. We've got Carlos that's saying, hello David, looking forward to this. Paul Lovell saying hi. Hi Paul, good to have you on there as well. I'm going to cut the video across to Marcus as well. So Marcus, everyone, you can see Marcus. We'll give Marcus a proper introduction there in a second, but thank you so much for joining us today, Marcus.
Well, it's great to be here, man. We're going to have a great chat, and excited to meet some of your audience as well.
Indeed. Yeah, it should be interesting. Johnny Scott in the chat saying, looking and sounding good, DB. Thank you very much, JS. And if you're liking and appreciating the content that's being shared, then please give it a bit of a share yourselves as well, and we'll try and get a few people watching this one. We're going to be recording an episode of the podcast Business Book of the Month live here on LinkedIn. So this I think could be a very interesting way to do this. So I'm just making sure that everything is lined up. If you bear with me one more second as I'm making sure that, here we go. I think we're just about ready to go. So I'm going to start the proper podcast introduction. We're starting to get 16 people watching now. It'd be good to get up to 20, 30. I'm sure we will over time. And of course, most people will consume this as an audio podcast. So let's get going with the proper recording of that, and indeed the proper introduction of Marcus. Business Book of the Month. I'll start that again. Business Book of the Month podcast, episode number 9. They ask, you answer. This is the Business Book of the Month podcast, and today we're discussing They Ask, You Answer, a revolutionary approach to inbound sales, content marketing, and today's digital consumer, with the author himself, Marcus Sheridan. Hello, Marcus.
David, great to be here talking about a subject that I love, man. So I'm ready to dive into it.
Looking forward to hearing from you. So, well, Marcus, one of the reasons that you started in this journey was the financial crash of 2008.
Yeah.
So can you maybe get going by telling the listener a little bit about what you were doing at the time?
Yeah, here's the really quick 101, right?
Okay.
And so I started a swimming pool company in 2001 with 2 friends. We were installing in-ground fiberglass swimming pools. And when the market crashed in 2008, it looked like we were going to lose our business. And in fact, I talked to some consultants, and all of them said, you should file bankruptcy. But the problem was, if I filed bankruptcy, I was going to lose my home. My 2 business partners would have lost their homes. My 16 employees at the time would have lost their jobs. So, we had to figure out a way how to get back over that edge we were going over. And we didn't have much time to do it. Didn't have really any money to do it with. And that's when I started to read about the internet. And I started to, read all these fancy phrases like inbound or content marketing, social media, blogging, all that stuff. But, David, what I heard in my simple pool guy mind at the time was, Marcus, if you just obsess over your customers' questions and you're willing to address them, whether they sound good, bad, or ugly, on your website through text and video, you just might save your company. And so I said, okay, team, we're going to do it. So we're going to embrace a philosophy. We're going to call it They Ask You Answer. And to make a long story short, we really did become the Wikipedia of swimming pools. We became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. It saved the business, and today we're a thriving fiberglass pool installer and manufacturer now all over the United States. But it all happened because of the economy crashing, which is why I'm grateful that it crashed, unlike maybe some might feel, because it's funny, it's because of oftentimes it's through pain that we're willing to do things that we otherwise would not have done. And that's exactly what the crash brought me.
So why not just keep the secret sauce yourself and kind of focus on building the business? Why actually help other people to do the same thing?
I've never really believed in the myth of the secret sauce. You know what I'm saying? I mean, everybody knows that the Big Mac has Thousand Island dressing on it, right? So it's the same with pretty much every single business out there. It's fascinating to me. What makes a company unique today isn't that they hold their secret sauce back. It's that they are willing to share it with the marketplace. We've gotten to the point as businesses where we want to see the sub made in front of us, right? And so if we can do that as organizations as well, and for me, I really come from this abundant mentality place that I was like, it's working for me. And so because it was working for me, in late 2009, I started a personal blog, and it eventually took off as well. And that's when I started having companies say, hey, can you show us how to do that thing you did at River Pools? Can you speak at our event? And it's been really amazing because, as you know, David, today, full-time, travel around the world. I speak, talk on this stuff. I've got an agency that's 65 people, so we have tons of case studies now. And I still own a swimming pool company. So it's been really an amazing ride. It's 10 years now. It's absolutely, absolutely phenomenal.
So, obviously it led you into writing this book, They Ask You Answer. Can you tell us a little bit about the philosophy behind the book itself?
Yeah, so there's a few things, right? And the beauty behind this book is most, quote, marketing or content books were written for marketers. And that's inherently flawed if you look at sales and marketing today, because the lines have been blurred. They bleed over into each other quite a bit, especially if you consider that 70% of the buying decision is made on average before someone talks to a salesperson. That's a B2B case study, right? That's a B2B study that they did. And so if we look at those things, we've got to see it as sales and marketing. So a good portion of the book's on marketing, good portion of the book's on sales, and on the convergence of them, right? And so really what They Ask You Answer is, it's an obsession with the way buyers think. Starts with, if anybody has ever asked us the question, we feel like it's our moral obligation as a business to address this on the front end, on our website, on our digital platforms, because we know if we don't address it on the front end, that if the buyer can't get it on the front end while they're digitally vetting us, that they're going to go somewhere where they can. And when they find it from someone else, that's who they're going to give their trust, and ultimately that's who they're going to give their business, right? They Ask You Answer is an obsession with the way buyers have changed. In other words, if they want to learn it a particular way, we don't say as a company, no, that's not the way that we talk about it. In other words, no. We've never done video before, so we're not going to start video now. No, it's like this is the way buyers want. Seven out of 10 B2B sales have watch or purchases involve watching a video. All right, in B2C, oftentimes it's even higher than that. And so when we look at these numbers, you can't deny the reality of, let's say, video in the sales process. So if a company is really focused on They Ask You Answer, the marketplace, is saying, hey, we want to see it, not just read it. And now as businesses, do we adjust? And then finally, I would say They Ask You Answer is an obsession with, if they want to buy it a certain way, are we willing to sell it that way, right? And so a lot of companies have been bypassed because they didn't look at the way that they sell or offer the thing and make it easier for the purchaser to do this. And so that's the essence of They Ask You Answer, and it aligns itself with the most simple philosophy of business that's been around since the beginning of time, which is trust. And that is the one thing that every business shares. It's the building block of all business. And really, the book, if you said to yourself, Um, if I said to you, in other words, would you like to become the most trusted voice in your space? I think many people would say yes, some would not care. But if you do say yes to that, you're going to find a definitive guide on exactly how to do that. And that's the philosophy that is They Ask You Answer. And so what's interesting too about it, David, is that the book, I launched it in 2017 without much fanfare. Mashable did call it the number one marketing book in 2017, but it didn't it wasn't, I didn't have a massive brand, right? I'm not Gary Vaynerchuk. And what's happened is over the course of 3 years, it's grown and grown and grown in sales. So it's actually picking up almost 3 years later instead of slowing down, which is why a revised version of the book is coming out next month.
Right. Okay. I was wondering why that was happening because I looked into the original version and obviously saw I listened to the audio version of the book recently and I saw that you appear to have published it in January 2017. So still relatively recently. Has there been any significant update then since then?
Well, the thing about the first book is that it mostly focuses on the philosophy, the application specific to text, and how you would address your customers' questions, especially the hard ones, right? Which we'll talk about, I'm sure, on your website and on your digital platforms. But what it didn't really talk about was video and the proliferation of video. And so now it talks 25,000 new words just on video and integrating video into the sales process and what types of video actually move the sales needle versus what types are a waste of your money, which you see a lot that are a waste of money. It talks about how to create this perfect They Ask You Answer website, if you will, and some other things that are affecting sales and marketers as we look around the turn, right? And so it's quite exciting because the amount of case studies, I mean, literally there are being college courses now in universities taught on They Ask You Answer. And it's really taken off with a lot of business schools. And it just makes sense when people read it. They're like, why am I? Of course, this makes total sense. Why are we not doing this? Of course, we should do this.
Great. Yeah, I first heard of you, Marcus, actually through the wonderful Chris Moore at the Content Marketing Academy
Chris
in
Ma.
Scotland.
Yes,
Indeed.
my Scottish friend. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm Scottish as well, so hopefully I can be your friend. But anyway, we're recording this live on LinkedIn. You were talking about video quite a bit as well, and LinkedIn's obviously a relatively new platform when it comes to video and certainly live video. We've got some good interaction going on. We're going towards getting 50 people watching live, which is great. So if you've got any comments, any thoughts on what Marcus is sharing, please share it live, and hopefully we can incorporate that as part of the discussion. I've got Kevin Asp saying, never gets old hearing this story. I always love learning something from this guy.
Yeah, Kevin's got an amazing story. Really quick, let me tell you about
Sure.
Kevin. Now, Kevin was the owner of what's called Alaska Sleep Clinic, and they were just this little sleep center in Alaska. Okay, and he came to me, and he had been reading my stuff, and he's like, "This whole They Ask You Answer makes a lot of sense." And what happened is, to make a long story short, they became the most trafficked sleep center in the U.S. in terms of their website, following the principles of They Ask You Answer. This little business in Alaska. He ended up selling the business, but it's a beautiful story because it just shows you what's possible, whether you're a location-based business, whether you're mom and pop, or whether you're enterprise. And I've got a lot of, there's some really big brands now that are embracing They Ask You Answer as well. I've currently working with Bass Pro Shops. They're doing the same thing. It's exciting to see because, again, it makes so much sense.
We've also got Kathleen Slattery Booth saying, so excited for this new book. We've got Stephanie Bioki. Sorry, I'm
Bioki?
butchering your surname there.
Stephanie
Exactly.
Bioki.
Saying,
Yeah.
hi, Marcus. So excited for the They Ask You Answer version 2. Marcus, are there any types of businesses that this philosophy isn't quite so appropriate for, or do you think it's suitable across the board, any type of business?
So, the number one issue that businesses and people in general have when they hear new stuff is it doesn't matter. So this is part of the great part about my job is speaking to different audiences, different cultures around the world. And doesn't matter the audience that you speak to, David, you can almost divide them in half, right? In the first half, here's the new philosophy, the new techniques, that whatever it is, and they might say, hey, that might apply to us. Maybe that's possible. Maybe we could do that. In the second half of the audience, they naturally lean towards saying things like, yeah, but you don't understand my business. Things are different, right? Newsflash, 100% of businesses in the world truly believe they're different. And although we all have different people and we sell different things, and some of us sell services and products, some of us are B2C, B2B, D2C, B2G, think of any other acronym. I mean, they're all out there. Again, everything comes back to trust, which is why I always want to focus on that. Because if I came to any business owner, regardless of the type of business they're in, if I said to you, is trust going to be fundamental to your business in 20 years? They would say yes. 100% would say yes. But if I went to a business owner, and if I said, is LinkedIn or is Facebook going to be fundamental to your business in 20 years? Most of them would say, I have no idea. And that's because those are platforms and they're finite. Whereas a principle does not have beginning, it doesn't have end, it's just going to keep on going. And so when you put your arms around principles as an organization, it can become a culture, and it can withstand this test of time, and you can adjust accordingly as new platforms come out. So you're not afraid what happens if Facebook leaves us, because we're just going to embrace those new on the new platform. We're going to embrace these same principles going forward. So I think this is what you just said is very, very important, David, right? So I have not seen exceptions to this mindset of be the best teacher in the world, transparency always wins, be more honest than anybody else in your space. Like, those are what constitute trust. And of course, there's specifics as to what They Ask You Answer teaches. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to talk about a couple of the specifics, just so everybody can catch the vision of what we're talking about here, right? So one of the things that big They Ask You Answer has become so well known for, and if you Google They Ask You Answer right now, one of the most common phrases are They Ask You Answer Big Five, right? Because there's 5 major subjects that move the needle in every single industry, regardless of what you sell. Again, service or product, it doesn't matter. In other words, 5 things that buyers want to understand before they engage a company. 5 things that we feel like we've got to get a sense for before we talk to a salesperson. So what are those 5 things? All right, here's the big 5. As buyers, what we're obsessed with is we want to know roughly how much is it, cost factors, budgets, rates. Just we want to get a sense for cost in the marketplace. It's number 1. As buyers, we want to know what are the issues with it? What are the negatives with it? How could this purchase, whatever it is, how could it go wrong? How could it blow up in my face? All right? As buyers, we want to know how does it compare to that other thing that we're looking at? So in other words, we love to compare versus questions and versus subjects. As buyers, we love to know what everybody else thinks about it, reviews. And as buyers, we want to know what the best it is. Okay, those are the 5. Cost questions, problems questions, comparison-based questions, review-based questions, and best questions. If anybody's watching this right now and you're thinking about, okay, the last time I made a major purchase, regardless of whether it's with another company or for a B2C good, you probably research one, if not all of those 5 things. Now, here's what's fascinating, David. Buyers are obsessed with them. Businesses do not like to talk about them. And because of that, we have a paradox of wants. The business would rather wait and address those once you're in the sales process. And if you happen to actually ask them about it, the buyer wants to know on the front end during that 70%, during that digital vetting period. Again, we have the paradox, right? And so this is why companies come to me all the time and they're like, Marcus, I don't understand. I'm producing all this content, but it's not getting results. And the sales team isn't involved. And it doesn't seem to be worth it. Now look at the content, and every single time you can see the same thing, that the businesses are talking about fluffy stuff that doesn't actually matter in the buying process. Here's the litmus test for content, especially with video, but certainly with text. And that is this simple question. Could your sales team, a member of your sales team, could they integrate that piece of content into the sales process right now? In other words, would they say, man, I'm so glad we finally addressed that because I keep on dealing with it when I meet with a prospect? And you might say, I don't have a sales team. Think of it in terms like you do have a sales team. Whether you get a call or somebody's in the research process, or even if you're e-commerce, it's the same set of questions. Now, what's crazy is, generally speaking, and I'm not exaggerating with this number, David, because I've looked at looked at thousands of case studies, looked at the data, looked at the stats. Over 90% of business content in terms of their websites, in terms of their social. Don't address the major questions that buyers actually have. It's a bunch of fluffy stuff that might make you feel good and might even give you a few likes on social media, but doesn't actually win the day. And that is the problem, and this is why we have a lack of ROI across the board.
Love that. And I totally agree with you. That's exactly what businesses should be writing about. I guess one of the key concerns or issues that a business may have is if they do the research, even with customers directly, and they make a list of all these wonderful questions, but then they do a bit more research in a tool like Google Keyword Planner or some other keyword research tool, and they can't find that much search volume for these keyword phrases. Is there still an argument to write these lengthy articles for those kind of phrases?
That is actually, generally speaking, not the case. In fact, the Big Five is the opposite of that. And so, in other words, let me give you an example. For 90% of our clients at my agency is called impactbnd.com, okay? Now we've got hundreds of case studies, especially of companies that have embraced They Ask You Answer, because companies contact us because they obviously read the book and they're like, I want to do this, I just need a little bit of guidance, right? So for 90% of our clients, half of which are B2B service-based businesses, the number one traffic, lead, and sales generating content has to do with money, cost, and price. And so once you start to really dive into this, you're going to realize this. You listening obsessively to what your customers are asking you, especially in the sales process, that is your greatest sales tool by far. That's your best keyword tool by far. And if you really, really listen, you will never run out of great content ideas going forward. And now your sales team can help produce that content. Your sales team will actually use that content. It will help them close more deals, and you'll eliminate the problem with silos and the massive issue that we have with sales and marketing alignment. It's funny to me. You keep hearing people talk about we have problems with sales and marketing alignment, but you don't really see anybody doing much about it in terms of organizations. You don't solve the problem by having a company outing. You don't solve the problem by having some little, just like shindig or party. What you do is you teach the sales team the what, the how, and the why of content, of digital, of video, how the sales process has changed, how today's buyer has changed. You help them see definitively how integrating themselves earlier in the sales process, also known as marketing, integrating into that side is going to dramatically affect their individual wallet and the collective as an organization. Now everybody sees it and they catch on. And I'm telling you, somebody might be listening to this and they're saying, I don't know if that's possible. I'm telling you, it's possible that sales and marketing teams become completely aligned. But it only happens when sales is responsible for production of the goods, the content. Now you might say, how do you get them responsible for it? You have to have a cultural shift. It starts from top to bottom, because the number one problem that we have in business right now for marketing teams, by far, it is not even close, David, is a lack of buy-in from leadership and sales. Where does a lack of buy-in come from? Always the same answer. They don't know. In other words, ignorance. They don't understand again, what, the how, and the why of all that stuff that you're talking about. Now, a lot of this has to do with the fact that marketers are terrible explaining what they do and why they do it. Why? Because they speak marketing. If marketers change the way that they spoke to a language of sales and a language like a business owner would speak, they would get a lot more approval. They would get a lot more resources. And this is one reason why my company has an event. It's actually next month, August 6th and 7th in Hartford, Connecticut. We're probably going to have 700-800 people there, and it's sales and marketing because, you see all these conferences, David, right? You go to a marketing conference, how many salespeople do you have there? How many leadership team members do you have there? And then we wonder why. We go to these events, we get fired up as marketers, we leave, we get back to the office, we present our ideas, And everybody poo-poos our ideas and rains on our parade because they weren't there. It's not because they are hard-headed per se. It's because they don't catch the vision, because they haven't been taught, because they weren't in the moment with you. They didn't have that magical learning moment, that learning shift. This is imperative. This is why we have Impact Live, and this is why the book was created for sales and marketing teams, not just one or the other, because that, at that point, in my opinion, doesn't do anybody any good.
So, digging into a specific example, a popular article that you wrote on your River Pools and Spas website compared fiberglass pools with concrete pools, but you don't
Yes.
sell concrete pools. So why write about something that
Right.
you don't offer as a business?
This is great. Great. One of the number one questions people used to ask me. Now, listen, as I'm explaining this, by the way, if you're listening to this, I want you to think of every comparison-based question you've ever received in business. In other words, a comparison-based question might sound like this. So you suggested this, but somebody else is telling me that. Or I'm looking at this, and you're suggesting that. Any type of comparison that a buyer has to make is going to be very relative to your business, because as buyers, we want to feel like we have looked at least 2 or 3 options, and therefore we can say, I have comfortably vetted the thing, right? And so I used to get asked all the time, Marcus, be honest, what is the difference between concrete and fiberglass? Or, Marcus, be honest, tell me why fiberglass is better than concrete pools. And here's what's crazy, David. No swimming pool company in the world had addressed that question when we started the process of They Ask You Answer in 2009. Why had they not addressed it? The reason why they hadn't addressed it, and this is still prolific today, is because the logic of Fiberglass Pool Guy was this. Fiberglass Pool Guy was saying our biggest competitor is concrete pools. And so this is how we're going to handle it. We're not even going to talk about them on our website. And if we don't talk about them on our website, well, then nobody will know they exist, which is so stupid, but this is the logic we use. We have to accept that buyers, they're not dumb. Even the uninformed is going to become the informed. And so the moment we start to treat the buyer as an educated human being, our ability to teach them and therefore earn their trust is dramatically higher. And oh, by the way, David, we didn't say fiberglass pools were better than concrete. We said, and let me give you an example of how it might sound. We said something like this. You know, people ask me all the time, so Marcus, which is better, concrete or fiberglass pools? Now, you might know we only sell fiberglass, but we recognize fiberglass isn't always the best solution. In fact, there are times when concrete is the better option. So what this article or what this video is going to do, it's going to explain to you the pros and the cons of both types of swimming pools. And then by the end, hopefully, you'll be able to decide which is the best choice for you. Now, here's the thing, David. How many businesses talk like that, man? They don't talk like that.
Yeah.
I was working recently with a major manufacturer, right? Creating videos. And this is a brand that everybody knows. And as part of the opening script, the subject matter expert on camera had to say, now this video is going to help you understand whether or not this is the right unit for you. And the manufacturer freaked out. They're like, you mean you're going to infer that it might not be the right unit for them? I'm like, yes, because newsflash, it's not always the right unit for them. And the moment we're willing to say what we're not, or what our product or service is not, is the moment we become dramatically more attractive to those who we are a good fit for. Yet most businesses, you don't hear them talking anything about who they're not a good fit for. That's way more important to talk about than who you are and who you are a good fit for.
So you touched on pricing as well. Are you saying,
Yep.
just to clarify this, that if a business is the most expensive in their industry, they don't really compete on price, that it's still appropriate to disclose what their average price is?
We don't compete on price is actually a complete misnomer. I would call it BS. The reason for that is because have you ever had somebody, and listen to, and just stay with me for a second, audience, because you're gonna be like, I don't know about this, Marcus. Have you ever had somebody buy something from you and they never even looked at the price? Because if it's true that price has nothing to do with our business, we don't compete at all on price, then it means they would not even look at it. No. They're always going to look at it. So there is a part of the buying decision has to do with price, but yes, that's what constitutes value. Now, let's look at price for a minute, okay? If I came to you and I said, all right, have you researched recently how much something costs online? You'd say yes. And if I said to you, so when you research how much something costs and you can't find it, what is the emotion you experience? Like if you're on a website and you can't find anything about cost and price, what's the emotion you experience? You would say, I feel frustrated, Marcus. And then if I said to you, so in that moment of frustration, do you say, oh, uh, do you just say, I'm going to look for it on this website until I find it? Of course, the answer is no. If I said to you, so do you say in that moment, that's okay, they're not talking about cost and price. They're a value-based business. I'm just going to call them on the phone instead. You don't do that either, because what you do is you keep looking and you look until you find. And generally speaking, whoever gives you what you're looking for, they're going to get your business. And if not your business, they're going to get a first phone call. Now, you might say, I'm still not picking up what you're putting down, Marcus, but here's the thing. There's 3 reasons, David, why businesses don't like to talk about cost and price. The first reason is we say things like every job is different and it depends. But here's the thing about it depends, okay? If I came to anybody that's watching this right now, and if I said to you, can you help me understand the factors that would drive the cost of your product or service up? You'd be like, yeah, sure, I can explain that. And if I came to you and I said, can you explain the factors that keep the cost of your product or service down? You'd say yes. If I came to you and if I said, can you help me understand this? You gave me a price, your competitors gave me a price, there seems to be a difference in the way that you all price. Can you help me understand why there's a delta in your industry? You would say yes, of course. And that's a question that has been answered thousands of times by most businesses. It's the easiest to address because the old it depends gives you this beautiful opportunity to explain what constitutes value. But if you don't explain it, here's what happens, David. Somebody will look at 2 things. They'll think they're the same thing because they don't know better. They're ignorant of your solution, right? They don't know better. You just said, hey, here it is, right? Didn't explain it. And because of that, before they ever talk to you, right? Because they haven't talked to you yet. Because they haven't talked to you yet, they assume it's the same 2 things. And now what are they going to base their decision on? They're going to base it now on price. And that's called commoditization. And that's the last thing we want to do. Education and experience are the 2 things that decommoditize in any space. Now, the other reasons why we don't like to talk about prices is because we say things like, well, we don't want to scare them away. That, again, is BS, because the thing that actually scares us away as buyers is when someone isn't willing to talk about it on the front end. That's when we leave. That's when we don't stay around. So ignorance is not bliss in that regard. And the third reason we don't like to talk about cost and price is we say things like, well, I don't want my competitors to find out, which is really stupid if we think about it, if we're being honest with ourselves, because if I came to any of your salespeople, if I said to them, do you have a very good sense as to what your competitors charge? You'd probably say yes, like 99% of the time. And so if you have a very good sense as to what your competitors charge, it therefore means they have a great sense as to what you charge. You see, this is the big secret, non-secret. Everybody acts like nobody knows what everybody's charging, when in reality, everybody has a pretty good sense as to what everybody's charging. But besides that, when was the last time your competitors paid your bills? Like never, right? Yet we allow them to stand between us and that magical thing that we call trust. So the old, it depends, I don't want our competitors to find out, and we don't want to scare them away. Those are the 3 biggest reasons. Yet that, if you look at it from a psychological basis, it's actually a false premise across the board. Now, you're still saying, yeah, but I don't want to put my price and rates on the website. I'm not suggesting that. What I am submitting here, and this is based on empirical data, right? If you are willing to teach the marketplace what drives the costs up, what keeps it down, and at least give them a sense as to what they can expect. Explain the value of the thing. Why are some companies cheap? Why are some companies expensive? If you do that, now they're at least going to say, okay, I understand. I feel like I get it. And if you do that too, you're going to generate, guaranteed, more traffic, more leads, and ultimately more sales. There's literally no reason not to do it, David.
I absolutely love that. I just want to clarify, when you say explain the value of the thing, does that mean that you're obviously explaining to people why something is a bit more expensive, but you're not necessarily giving them the definitive
I have
final
manufacturers,
price?
David, I have manufacturers come to me all the time, and they're like, Marcus, Chinese are killing us. I'm like, well, are you making the exact same thing? Well, no, we're making it better. Have you definitively shown to the world how yours is manufactured better on the front end during that digital experience, or do you just wait for your salesperson to explain it? Well, I mean, our salespeople explain it, but they explain it really well. Well, that's not working. We can't do that anymore, right? People make bad buying decisions generally out of ignorance, not because they're bad buyers. We can't forget that as businesses, David. And never in the history of the world do we have the opportunity to educate like we do right now. And we've never had more educated buyers. This is why so many buyers are more intelligent about that thing that they're buying than the salesperson, because they have learned about it so much online. The question is, have they learned it from you? Because I don't know about anybody that's listening to this, but if I had a choice and somebody said to me, Marcus, your customers have a lot of hard questions. Now, would you rather be the one that answers those questions, or would you rather your competitors or some third-party site, would you rather they be the ones to educate the marketplace? I'm like, no, I'm in the front lines here. I'm in the front row. I want them to hear from me every single time. At least then I can inject myself into that conversation.
Superb stuff. We've got Stephanie that's saying in the chat we just hit 50 live viewers, but that's just live on LinkedIn, Stephanie. We're actually broadcasting live on YouTube and Facebook and Periscope at the same time. I haven't even checked there. There's maybe loads more people watching live there. Indeed. Absolutely. But if you're wanting to participate in the interaction, the live interaction, and add your comments, please just head over to LinkedIn. That's where we're checking the live interaction. We've got Col Gray saying, I can hand on heart say what Marcus teaches completely changed my business. As a testimonial for you, Marcus.
Well, there's a few of them out there. You know what I'm saying? Like now there's thousands of them out there. And that's the beauty of the book. This is why, listen, if you're listening to this, the revised version is releasing at the end of this month. Literally, it's available on Amazon right now. And it is, whether you're a mom and pop or whether you're an enterprise, the beauty is the solutions, they scale. What this teaches, the strategy, the philosophy of They Ask You Answer scales, which is why so many businesses are getting into it so much and it's taking off.
So one other thing that I've noticed, Marcus, is that a lot of your content doesn't really necessarily have a great deal of branding or a strong call to action. I watched one of your videos on fiberglass against concrete poles, and it's got nearly 200,000 views, but it was fairly low quality video, just one of your customers expressing their views on the subject.
Video, let's be honest, the video really sucked, David.
So, no, but was that done strategically, or was that just because where you were
at
the time?
Okay. So when I got started with this whole YouTube video thing, I'm like everybody else. Wasn't good on camera. Didn't know technology. Didn't know lighting. Oh my gosh, if you saw the first video I ever did, it looks like someone just drugged me out of the bottom of a pond that I had been in for 3 days. I mean, because, I looked like sunken in. The lighting just looked awful. This is the reason why so many companies are being held back. The companies that are crushing it are more concerned with failing forward than they are about protecting their prestigious image and making sure everything is just perfect. See, what we've forgotten is that you cannot run before you walk. You cannot walk before you crawl. And a lot of businesses, they'll get into something like video, and they say, no, we got to start the race running. Newsflash, it doesn't work that way. Your subject matter experts are probably not going to be so great at first until they've had a little bit of experience in training. You're probably not going to figure out the perfect place to shoot in your office or your location, or all the other variables that go with it, or the subjects that move the needle or do not. And so this mindset of, it's got to be great, we're not allowed to say it unless it's never been said before. There's a lot of really bad advice when it comes to the world of marketing and digital in general. Easily the worst one of all time is what I just said. Whoever said first that unless it's awesome and unless it hasn't been said and you're, quote, adding to the conversation, then you shouldn't say it. Whoever says that, you need to saw their ankle off with a spoon. And I'm telling you why. Because think about it, man. Who has really said anything new in the last 1,000 years? I mean, it's, for the most part, we're all repeating what somebody else already knows, just in our way, in terms of how life has taught me. You think They Ask You Answers new? No, it's not new. It's just nobody, for the most part, was doing it really, really well.
Yeah.
And so I said it in a way, and I taught it in a way, and packaged it in a way that people said, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Why are we not doing it? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So back to your original question, David. Those old videos that I did in 2010 and 11, they're all bad quality. They don't follow best practices. And yet we've got a few million views between the videos that we've done on swimming pools. And every single one of them was a beautiful victory because we hit publish, we learned, we failed forward, and we're pretty good today. Which is why if you watch my videos today, you'd be like, wow, that's not the same dude I saw that was making videos 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Because we had to crawl before we walked.
Oh, absolutely. I first broadcast or published my video on YouTube in 2007, but please, people, don't check them out. You don't want to be doing that. I tell you what, Marcus, something else that really hit home for me was you saying that if a prospect reads 30 pages of your site, they have an 80% chance of making the sales. That's an incredible figure. Does that figure apply across other industries as well?
Okay, yeah. So what you're referring to is that we have found, again, through data, because we track it all, right? Almost all of our customers use a tool like HubSpot. Most of them use HubSpot. What we have found is there's a tipping point for content in terms of how it equates to closing rates. So, for example, with River Pools, I was really looking at our data in 2013. What I found is if somebody read 30 or more pages of our website before the initial sales appointment, they would buy 80% of the time. If they didn't hit that number 30, the closing rates were about 25%. So they would go from 25%, which is industry average, 1 in 4 appointments you go on, you'll close, to 80%, 4 in 5 appointments you go on, you close. And so, of course, how does that happen? It happens because in the process of consuming that content, they were pushing themselves or out of the funnel, right? Now, somebody might say, well, good golly, how much content do you have on your site? Well, I mean, today the River Pool site's probably, I don't know, about 1,000 pages. But that happened because for 2 straight years, every single day I'd go on a sales appointment. I'd hear a question that we hadn't addressed well on the website. And I'd say, I better put that on the website. And you see, that's the simple beauty behind it, right? And for the most part, especially at first, I did this by myself. I didn't have a team, but I didn't have a choice. That's why when companies come to me and say, Marcus, I don't know if I have time for this. I don't know if we have the resources for this. I'm like, no. You just don't have enough pain. Because if you experience enough pain in business, all of a sudden you find the time, you find the resources, you don't value the thing yet. Somebody in life tells you they don't have the time. What they're really trying to tell you without actually telling you is I just don't value that thing. And often it's because they're not aware or educated on that thing yet. They haven't had the brutal experience that life taught me. And so I wasn't going to make excuses. I went from 8 to 6 hours of sleep a night. I didn't watch any TV. I still haven't watched Game of Thrones. But yet, hey, I was busy getting it done. Here's the choice that we have to make as businesses. Now, I don't suggest most companies do it our way. Right? If you don't have that financial gun to your head, you're much better off, in this case, bringing on a recent journalist graduate, somebody like that is a great writer, an editor, an interviewer that can interview your subject matter experts and can get what's in their head up on the screen, be it through text or be it through video. This is where we need to go. The idea that you can be prolifically great as a teacher in your space, right? And become known as the most trusted voice in your space and not have somebody that's fully dedicated to being that voice, at least one or more, right? And I think most companies are going to have a multiplicity of these people, but over time, right? But you got to have at least one person that owns this.
So you talk about
it might be you at first, like that, but it's going to be somebody that you bring on.
Does it have to be in-house? Does it have to be in-house or kind of?
Yes, David. Yes, this is the part that everybody screws up, right? I'm so tired of you see so many companies outsourcing their content production. And how does it generally go? Have you ever seen a world-class case study on text or video in terms of them becoming the voice of their space where they outsourced the whole thing to an agency? And this is coming from somebody that owns an agency where we do video production. We definitely don't do content production, but we try to teach everybody the old philosophy, and that is this. And this is, again, a principle that's inarguable. Give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, feed him for a lifetime. And so if you want to feed yourself for a lifetime, this has to become something internal. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to insource 100% of your video going forward. But here's the goal. At least 80% of your general messaging and content production, text, video, or whatever it is, should be produced within the walls of your company. Because that's the soul of your business, and nobody knows your business like you. And if you want to reach that potential, you're going to have to figure this out. Now, I've talked to so many companies at first that said, there's no way we could do that. And then when they catch the vision, they laugh about it a year later, David, and they're saying, oh, we need a second content writer, or we need a videographer. Or I've got companies right now that started with me, and we were lucky to hire one writer, and now they've got, I think, 5 videographers on staff. Videographers. Now, that's a larger company, right? But that's where we're all headed, David.
And in terms of software, you've mentioned HubSpot already today. You also mentioned and recommend HubSpot quite a bit in your book. Has that recommendation changed over the last couple of years? Is there other software that you recommend as well?
Well, HubSpot's not for everybody. It's definitely not for the solopreneur, right? Although there's a freemium version of it. Ultimately, here's what matters, David, is we need to be able to have a conversation at the end of the quarter or at the end of the year that says, this is working, this is not working, this is how much money it generated, or this is how much money it lost. We must measure our digital sales and marketing efforts. I find that HubSpot is the best tool in the world for that. And if marketers want to get a raise, you got to use tools to show your value. Not enough marketers are getting paid what they should because they haven't shown their value, and they don't have the reason for this is they don't have the tools. Now they might say, well, I can't get buy-in for the tools, Marcus, so what do you expect me to do? You got to do a better job at communicating, because if you become a world-class communicator, then the leadership team cannot argue with what you're suggesting to be true. Either that or get them, they ask you answer, the new version on Amazon right now, have them read that junk, and then you'll probably get the buy-in that you need.
Superb.
And the resources, in the budget.
Marcus, as you've said, we've been discussing your excellent book, the content in your excellent book, they ask you answer. But what is your favorite business book by another author, and why?
Man, I'm going to give you what some might consider a cheesy answer, but I believe it's the greatest human relationship book ever written, which I think that's what marketing is, and that is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think it's magical. It's as magical today as it was almost 100 years ago when it was written. And it's still true. Dale Carnegie. Greatest personal development mind of all time. Don't even think it's somebody like Tony Robbins or some junk like that, or any of these other kooks. You see, I'm telling you, the greatest personal development mind of all time, or at least within the last couple hundred years, Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie. Timeless.
Stuff. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can find Marcus and his wonderful book over at marcussheridan.com. Marcus, thank you so much indeed for being on businessbookofthemonth.com.
My pleasure, brother.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we were broadcasting live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Periscope, and Facebook. Primarily, I think, on LinkedIn in terms of audience size, but I might look elsewhere and discover differently afterwards. For everyone who is watching live, thank you so much for interacting. Thanks for your thoughts and questions. Any likes or shares would be much appreciated. I'm sure lots of people got a significant amount of value out of this. So superb stuff. Obviously, the podcast will be published on businessbookofthemonth.com in the next few weeks. Most people will consume this as an audio podcast. So if you're not an audio podcast listener, just hop on there, subscribe to the podcast using Apple Podcasts, wherever you actually want to subscribe to it. Last month's show was about email marketing with Chad White. Great topic there. The month before, I had Ryan Levesque on, and that was an incredible discussion as well. So lots of great previous episodes to listen to as well. But we're going to leave you just now. Colgrave saying, awesome stuff, Marcus and David. Thank you so much. Richard saying, great show. Yeah, thank you all for joining us so much. It was great to have you all on here in this little bit of a LinkedIn Live experiment. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll catch up soon.